Very welcome. Thank you very much for coming in. And like, it's so obvious that staffing and retention of staff is such, it's the biggest issue, I think, within the sector. And I suppose, like, I come from the community myself, so and I've worked in models like your own in YMCA. Like, I've worked in a very similar model where there's wraparound support, so I'd be a very big believer for those kind of models, that you're very quick to pick up additional needs for families, and that there's a quick quick kind of provision. So, like, and this means absolutely no disrespect, because we've all different, providers here. But I suppose my idea of a state-led model would be that it would be community-based, and I just think we have to be really careful that there's not a transfer of funds and that's why I think I'd like to ask Sonis and Karen yourself as well. Like, we've seen in other sectors, particularly housing, where there has been a direct transfer of state money into private providers, which has made, which has caused mayhem, and we can see the, I suppose, the consequences of that now. I'd love to see maybe, Teresa or Mary, how could there ensure that when commercial providers are part of the state-led provision, how can we ensure that there is a connectivity with community, referrals to community groups, linking in with community groups, with schools, with wraparound programs such as yourselves, family support programs. And I just think that's a really important part of that. It's not just a direct transition from parents paying for their own, childcare fees, that the state instead is providing it. So thanks. And I know, Karen, that you've been in the childcare committee, so I know this is,
No, I think there's absolutely ways. It's about where the money is going to, isn't it, really, from the state? So I think, and I think that's caused a lot of the issues actually between government and sector. We have to acknowledge that, a lot of the provision in Ireland is provided by private providers, ones who have, really committed their lives to this, and a sector that isn't a high profit margin sector, and that's acknowledged in all of the reports. But it's about where you put the money. So there's this distrust between both because of, funding coming into the sector, and where is that funding going to? And that's why I think funding going directly to staff paying conditions is the best place, because then we know where it goes to. I just become an administrator of that money and administer it directly onto the people who work within the sector. And then you take all of this guessing game about, we're giving all this money to the sector, but where does it go? You kind of take that out of it. Because, and so the ASD units that we work within, the preschool ASD units, is an example of that. So at the moment we have colleagues, they're all qualified school teachers with school teacher numbers. We register those, they work directly with the children. It's a really good programme of high quality delivery. So you're talking about 6 children within a classroom, 4 teachers, so really high impact. We directly register all of those teachers, we receive their pay, and we just pass it along. We have no contact with the funds whatsoever.
And could you see, Karen, just on that, if we want to have, paying, we know that early years providers are way underpaid. I know that, and what would you see would you see it in same as teachers,
Absolutely.
Same as SNAs, same as teachers, that'd be on the base level coming in as
they're
teachers?
Degree level colleagues. They're just learning about a different part of development. And actually, I've sat the degree myself. It is so rich in learning, and worked with children prior to doing that degree. But the learning that I learned in that degree is second to none, being able to put what you do on the ground with your passion into actually the understanding and learning behind why you're doing it, and you just become really rich in your learning.
No, thank you. And that would take in then, I suppose, my concerns, that it's the wages are paying directly to staff at a wage that state funding is providing. Thank you. And thank you. Teresa and Mary, could you kind of...
I do agree with what Karen said in terms of directing money towards the staff wages. I also think that there are very well proven schemes in the past where funding has been directed towards capital investment, because I think at the moment, because of the way core funding is directed, there's no incentive to services to spend capital expenditure, to put money into developing the environments, and that's one of the shortfalls. So there's going to be stagnation in the sector, and it's very easy to have a very accountable system where there's development in terms of it's a receipted system. Effectively, it's been done in the past, and I think it's worked fairly well even in the childcare sector, and it does provide opportunity to develop the services, to develop the environments for the children. So I agree on staff, but in terms of the physical environment, I think that's also very important. The other thing I would like to say is, while it is a predominantly private provider sector, all of those private providers are community based, in that they're all based in their own community, employing members of the community in most cases. And for that reason, I do think that even though we are mostly private providers, we are very deeply embedded in the local community where we're operating.
That's, and I think that's the important of sitting on things like childcare committees, part of, you know, like our CFSNs, all those SIPC groups.
I do think targeted funding, in terms, you said, around ensuring that private providers are linking in with the local schools and things like that, a little bit of targeted funding towards specific measures around that, because in a private service, it's very, very difficult to find the ring-fenced funds to do those type of engagements when you're already strained in terms of spending in order to keep your staff levels to meet legal requirements. It's very, very hard then to try and ring-fence funds outside of that to meet the things you really want to do as opposed to the things you have to do. So if the department were to ring-fence funds for things like those specific community
you said that to release
measures.
Staff to go to meetings like that and things. Is that what you're kind of mean around that?
I suppose it's the funding of the staff to go to those meetings. So we have recruitment issues in getting those staff in the first place, which goes back to the level of funding that's available to offer them in terms of pay. So by offering higher pay, we're going to attract more into the sector to make more available to partake of those things.
To participate in, like you do. And
it's a circle in terms of how we get to that point.
And I suppose, and that again comes within about the ratio that, you know, when you, like it wasn't a Jewish mum said that you provide additional staff, that then how is that for the auto enrolment then? If they're not seen as being part of the core funding for the ratio, how do you pay for their contributions to auto enrolment?
We hire them as a part of our, you know, they're permanently with us then.
Okay.
It's just we do put that into the core funding. You do get some funding towards it, but it's not enough, as we said before, with the core funding linked to that. So if you go purely by the regulations, say for example, so for an extra room, 2 staff, 22 children, that's not practical or feasible. So we do then have to hire extra people in for that. So your wage bill goes up.
And does that come in? And I mean about auto enrollment. How is auto enrolment working out? Has it? Because I know in other sectors, we'll say the voluntary community sector where I would work, they're still waiting for confirmation. Nothing is very clear in it. And
No.
if it was someone like that, you employed extra staff outside the ratio. How would their auto enrolments? How does that work?
No, they're just we put.
You're just seen as an extra additional staff.
Yeah, they're just seen as extra staff. So it's all they just across the board.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how is I probably have no time, but just wondering about auto enrolment. Have you got
Huge
confirmation?
cost to the
Well, it's a huge cost. That we don't have any support on.
And you're not getting any confirmation about it.
No.
Garma.